Zohran Mamdani is the American left's biggest bet. Mamdani's victory last week in New York City marks a turning point for leftists and progressive politics in America. Mamdani sits now not in a legislative chamber, but in an executive role as mayor of New York City. Most of the leftist politicians and leaders in America are in legislative chambers debating policy, trying to push their priorities into the public discourse. AOC, Bernie Sanders, the squad, they've built their reputations and their careers based on being legislators or agitators or protesters or vision setters, but they've not been executives. Even the insiders like Progressive Caucus Chair Pramila Jayapal operates within Congress's procedural machinery, pushing her priorities and the priorities of the progressive movement onto the docket. But few on the left, and none currently, have truly held executive office where competence is judged by not by passion, but by performance, by outcomes. Mamdani's campaign was electric and it resonated throughout the five boroughs. But now he needs to govern, and he inherits a vast bureaucracy that he's never run. He will be hemmed by Governor Kathy Hochul, who's up for re-election next year and who's not going to raise taxes. He's going to have to work through the New York State legislature, who will not necessarily approve his plans because it's far more moderate than his politics. And his city hall is not a rubber stamp either. Three potential futures await Mamdani and the American left. Potential one is the unlikely hero scenario. Mamdani defies expectations. He masters the machinery of city politics. He outmaneuvers his skeptics, and he delivers on his sweeping agenda. The left would hail him as proof that democratic socialism can work, not just in theory, but actually in practice. And while this is the least likely outcome, it would redefine progressive politics in America. Number two, potential scenario number two, the likely partial win. This is the most likely of the scenarios. Mamdani delivers on pieces of his affordability message, whether it's rent freezes through the rent control board or free bus programs or the piloting of free supermarket zones in each of the boroughs, perhaps expanded mental health services within the NYPD or additional to the NYPD, while still shelving his tax goals, his taxing of the rich. This would show progress, but not transformation. In other words, he would become another Bill de Blasio, a progressive leader who creates landmark pieces of legislation like de Blasio did with pre-K, but not resetting the city as a haven for the working class. Possible scenario three is the collapse of New York City. The city turns south, crime ticks up, and NYPD disengages as it did under de Blasio, and businesses reconsider their footing. The public safety eclipses any affordability goals, and the narrative becomes that the left can't manage, and the American right points to New York City as evidence that the American left can't govern. The city, as well as the country, would turn away from the progressive movement. Also, a less likely scenario. Mamdani is a stress test for the movement that he embodies. For years, progressives have defined themselves based on what they fight for. But now, with New York City and Zohran Mamdani as our next mayor, this is the proving ground for the progressive movement. They're going to be judged not by what they fight for, but what Mamdani and the progressive left can deliver for New Yorkers.